Good evening, everybody. My name is Clayton Thomas Mueller. I'm a Cree man from Pugatawagan Cree Nation, Treaty 6 territory. I'm talking to you from London, from the United Kingdom tonight. I am so happy to be your MC for our incredible webinar that we have tonight of some protectors that have been fighting to protect the sacredness of Mother Earth from this insane proposal to double the Trans Mountain Kinder Morgan pipeline, which would see, of course, a sevenfold increase in tanker traffic in the sacred coastal Salish Sea and right there in the Burrard Inlet in the city of Vancouver. And so, in a good way, I am the Stop It at the Source campaigner with 350.org. And joining us on the call today, we have Will George Swayson. He's a member of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and heading up the project to protect the inlet. This fall, Will walked away from an 18-year career to fight against the Kinder Morgan pipeline full-time. Will is heading the Indigenous-led defense that begins on March 10th and 11th in Metro Vancouver. Also joining us tonight, of course, is Brandon Gabriel. He is an extremely talented Kwantlen artist and frontline fighter against the Kinder Morgan pipeline through the organization Stand with Kwantlen. This spring, Brandon and his community will build the Kwantlen Healing Lodge to stand in the way of the Kinder Morgan pipeline proposed route. And of course, we have Kanahus Manuel, who is an incredible Secwepemc freedom fighter and founder of the Teeny House Warriors, who have been on the front lines of stopping Kinder Morgan. She is the daughter of the late great Secwepemc chief Arthur Manuel and the granddaughter of George Manuel. Her and her family are building 10 tiny houses in the way of the Kinder Morgan pipeline on their territory. And also speaking to us, last but not least, from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation is Taha, who has been fighting against the Kinder Morgan pipeline for 8 years. She has been the leader of many of the gatherings that have brought the people together there in her territory. She is the daughter of Chief Dan George, and the mother, of course, of Sundance Chief Reuben George, who many of you have heard speak powerfully and eloquently at the mobilizations over the last many years of protecting Mother Earth there in the territory in BC against Kinder Morgan. And so, the purpose of our webinar today, of course, is to hear, and learn from one another in a good way so that we know how to best show up for the frontline communities, Indigenous communities that are fighting against this pipeline, that are going to win against this pipeline, that are going to stop Justin Trudeau, that are going to stop Kinder Morgan, and going to stop Rachel Notley, all the proponents that are trying to build this project and threaten the sacred salmon economy that exists in these territories. And so we're going to hear, from their own words, each of these speakers share. They're going to share in a good way. And we're going to open up first with Taha and Will George from Tsleil-Waututh territory. So if you guys want to just take it away and get us started here, that would be great. And at the end of the webinar, folks, just save your questions. Please post them in the chat. Send them in your own way, and we'll have some question and answers at the end of hearing our speakers speak.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So I'm Will George from Tsleil-Waututh Nation. My traditional name is Swayson. So first of all, this is my dear loved one, my elder sitting beside me. I wouldn't do this work if I didn't have the support of my elder beside me. So, and just thanking everybody that's chiming in right now and listening and want to hear our words and our message today. So just thanking you all for viewing in today. Do you want to start with any questions, or no, just get right into it? Yeah, do you want something to say?
Go.
Okay, so I've been asked to spearhead this project by my elders, my spiritual leaders, Just in the last few months, like our host here shared with you, I walked away from an 18-year career of cleaning windows and high rises, and I've always found the importance of the water and the ceremony that we have. For the last few months, I've been in ceremony with my spiritual leaders and elders regarding this, and we're organizing, we're communicating with allies, and I've chosen this month to completely isolate myself this month to be in ceremony. We're actually cutting our ceremony, a little short for us to do this tonight, but these are the tools we choose to use, the media. These are the people we choose to work with to get our message out there. Centuries ago, it would be, a lone messenger, maybe going to village to village, sharing the message and carrying that message. Today, I'm that messenger. I'm that warrior today. And our message is that we won't allow this pipeline to carry this crude, toxic chemical through our lands and jeopardize our waters that we've been protecting for so many years. It's very important to us. I'm sure my child is getting a little emotional right now just preparing to talk about this, because this water is very important to us, and we don't do this for our children. We do this for your children, people that are viewing. There's no way we can allow this pipeline to head through our waters and carry on polluting the rest of the earth. So, this is just some of the reasons that drive me to do this. Is I'm that voice for my elders, for my spiritual leaders, for my nieces and nephews that can't speak for themselves or stand up and do this. So again, just encouraging everybody, asking, people that are chiming in that want to help us. We need your help too. We can't do this without you. So we really appreciate, your interest and your drive too to come help us. We really appreciate it. Our hands are up to you. Anything you want to add, Tom?
Tislewa Inuit, this Burrard Inlet, we're called people of the inlet, and we've taken care of this water. We have many creeks flowing into this inlet, and when I was little and growing up, we could be playing around in the area and we could drink out of any creek going down into the water. When the tide went out, it was like the table was set. We could go and get the crabs, clams, oysters, and we haven't been able, my grandchildren don't know it already. And what Kinder Morgan plans to do is dig 50 feet into this inlet, which is going to take care of all of it's going to kill the fish and the crabs and the oysters and everything in this water. They intend to go to the top of the inlet, and that's where the pipeline is going to come from. And it's not if there's a spill, it's when there's a spill. And that toxic gases will have to move or die here. I had a very clear vision of what happens to this reserve from where the band office all the way down. I come out of my house and I looked around, there's 3 houses and no people. And it was just all like sand. All the people had moved. And then I turned and looked towards the water and it was just thick and black. And that's how it would be from 75 to 100 years. It will still be in the water. I've walked the tar sands. I've been out that way twice. And the trailing ponds are so poisonous. They have a gun that goes off every few minutes so that when the birds land in there, they'll fly away, but they already touched the poison and they're already dying. On that walk from sunup to sundown, I saw 1 bird and it was dead on the ground. I saw a bear being pulled, a big black bear being pulled out of the trailing ponds, dead. And they said at the Tar Sands Museum that it's contained. How do you contain water? How do you contain air when there's pure carbon dioxide flowing into the air 24/7? And all the deaths it's taken, it's not only the animals and the fish, it's the people. I've talked to the people where they're little kids running around with big running sores. They pull a fish out and it's all cancer underneath. And at the time when Melina first came to this, to our gym on our reserve and spoke about it, and I thought, do we want this here? Do we want this here? with all the fish and the birds and ourselves. I'm a great grandmother, and up to this point, I feel I lived my life, and I'm thinking about my grandchildren and what are they going to be living with? Is it going to be like the vision I saw with just only 3 houses? Where did everybody else go? Kinder Morgan never cleans up after a spill. They don't give people money who have to move or stay there and breathe 8 toxic gases in bitumen. And we either have to move or die here. And I don't want that kind of future for my grandchildren. So also I'm speaking to the Tsleil-Waututh people and all the supporters, all the people who live in the Lower Mainland, in Vancouver, North Vancouver, West Vancouver. The ones on Burnaby Mountain are working hard, but it's time that you put down your remote control, you put down your Game Boys, and it's time to fight for something and warrior up. That's what I told my own people the very first meeting. Warrior up. Fight for something. Fight for your children. If you just think of yourself and your life, you will allow anything to happen in your territory, in your home, in your water, in your air, on your land. But if you think of your children and your great-grandchildren, then that's how you feel about it. You see, I'm not going to let this happen to my grandchildren. I'm not going to let this happen to my great-grandchildren. So I'm pleading with you people who are listening. You don't just say, oh, it's the Indians who are fighting this. It's the environmentalists. No. It's, if you live in the Lower Mainland, it's up to you to stand up and say no to Kinder Morgan. They can't just come in from Houston, Texas, and just say, I'm going to dig 50 feet into the inlet. I'm going to build a pipeline. Who benefits? Kinder Morgan. We don't benefit. We don't get no money. All we get is poison gases. Pipelines blow up. They leak. They spill. I don't want this for my children or grandchildren. If you can put it in your mindset that I'm going to speak up for my children. And that's what the message I want to put out right now is that so many people have no clue what's going on here. I spoke to a checkout clerk and she said, something's going on at Kate's Park, which is really Waywichin. And I said, oh, it's a fight against Kinder Morgan. And she says, oh, who's that? I'm like, oh my God, you live and work here? It's amazing. Just be aware, and if you want to join the fight, we have Sacred Trust. I think Will just got handed where you can get in touch. If you hear about any rallies or any, even if we go right and bodily block the pipeline, I think that's going to have to happen. I'm so grateful to Kanahus for the homes that she's building. I'm real grateful to all of you who are talking tonight, and I thank you all. Hosian.
Thank you so much, Taha. I and Will, you know, before we move on to our next speaker, Brandon Gabriel from Kwantlen, can you talk a little bit more, just a bit? We're almost at the end of the 15 minutes here. But what can, you know, given everything that's going on right now in Canada, our country, this country they call Canada, being torn apart by, you know, things like the verdict on Colton Bushy and, you know, just this ongoing, never-ending threats to our homelands by these corporations. Can you say a little bit about what can non-Native people do to show up in the best way to respect the resistance fight against Kinder Morgan? Can you say a little bit about like how our non-Native allies can show up in a good way?
It's like we're talking about.
I know, I've got 2 in there. So who are you going to, sorry?
Either of you, just a little bit about how can our non-Native people show up in the best way in this fight against Kinder Morgan?
Sure, I'll take this one. So the best way our supporters and our allies to come join us is, I shared with you before, I put myself in complete isolation in ceremony with my elders, my spiritual leaders, and we're really focusing on this. And with our teachings and in our beliefs, we could change the world, but these are the tools we choose to use. We use this media to get our message out there. So come join with us, and just encouraging you to come be with us and with our spiritual laws and all of our prayers. And we just really encourage all the viewers to come have ceremony with us and come stand with us. We can't do this alone. We need you people too. So just really encouraging you to come join with us and stand with Ta'a and me.
Well, thank you so much, Will and Taha. We're going to move on to our next speaker. For the viewers, please submit questions that you have for all of our speakers, and we'll try and have a few Q&A at the end of the call here. But thank you so much, and prayers and my heartfelt thanks to both of you for sharing the words that you've shared. So our next speaker is Brandon Gabriel. As I mentioned, he's a wonderful artist from Kwantlen and a frontline fighter against the Kinder Morgan pipeline, and he's got his baby with him joining us tonight. So go ahead, Brandon Gabriel, take it away. Talk about the good work you're doing with Kwantlen Healing Lodge and standing in the way of Kinder Morgan.
Sure. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to the organizers of this event for having my family be part of this evening. This is my daughter Jamie. She's going to be 2 years old in about a month, and beside her is my partner Kachina. So the whole family's here. I think one of the things that I would just like to say to Ta'a and Will, for your words, you really, I think one of the things that I don't ever get to share that often, but my Auntie Lillian was married to one of the Georges in Tsleil-Waututh. And she was very proud of that, and I'm honored that I get to share some space, some virtual space with my kin in Tsleil-Waututh. First, I think I need to iterate that I'm here speaking this evening on behalf of my community, but also on behalf of the organizers of Stand with Kwantlen, that I'm actually just a small part of a much larger group of people that is doing a lot of hard work. And Kachina is one of those people who's been really powerful in her leadership as well, getting this mobilization to where it is today. And there are several other people that are working with us that are doing amazing work. I don't have their permission to say their names on this broadcast, so I won't. But I think one of the things that I would just like to iterate first is that the purpose of our healing lodge is to, one is, yes, there's this pipeline issue, but one of the things that we see working that will work really well for our community is addressing the issue of colonization itself and what it's done, what impacts it's had on our communities, and that there's this ongoing struggle that has existed before the Kinder Morgans arrived to our shores, and that those that they are just part of this ongoing process of colonization in our lands, and it's had a lot of negative impacts in our communities, and one of the things that we need to have are people who are strong in their mind, in their hearts, in their bodies, and in their spirits. And so we want to create something that looks beyond the impact of these pipelines that we're now faced with. And in my mind, the pipelines are just an extension of so many other ghastly things that we've had to deal with in our lifetimes and in my elders' lifetimes as well. The Stand with Kwantlen organizing team is still looking for volunteers to help us with our build. We're going to be needing people who have some construction experience. We don't have transportation sorted out. Given the fact that this is a grassroots initiative, we don't have like corporate sponsors to shuttle people, that sort of thing. If you intend to come, we ask that the people who come to help, that they be self-sufficient in every way. That means they have their own transportation, their own food. Don't count on Kwantlen Nation to provide for you, because it's not our responsibility. It's your responsibility to look after the land that you benefit from. And I would also like to iterate that we are also a drug and alcohol free. This is a drug and alcohol free movement that we are part of. We are a young family, and we believe that we need to have healthy people there at all times. We do have a web page. Do we have a web page?
Yeah,
Yes.
Stand.earth.
So we have a web page that has updates. It's called standwithkwantlen.org. It's really easy for you to find our email, which we will promptly get back to you with if you have any questions. And we're also launching a design contest for our healing build. So we launched it today on social media. So the idea is that we are going to put a call out to Indigenous youth to help design our lodge, and the winning submission will receive $1,000 for helping design the lodge, with a preference to Indigenous youth. Anything else I should say? I think that's it. I think we'll just take questions from this point on.
Can you talk a little bit more about, how it is that this plan, what was the core of this plan? How did it come together? The approach that you're using, for the Kwantlen Healing Lodge. Can you just expand a little bit more, and then we'll move on to our next speaker?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the Kwantlen Nation unceded territories fall in present day Langley, Maple Ridge, Mission, Surrey, New Westminster. Most of these lands are now occupied by multiple municipal jurisdictions, federal and provincial jurisdictions, and private landowners. We still assert that this land is still our territory. However, we're in a little bit different situation than, say, somebody further up north, say our friends up in Unistoten, who are fighting campaigns up in their territories. They're in a little bit different situation than us because of the growing metropolis that is the Lower Mainland. And so one of the things that we decided that we were going to do was, in order for us to take this fight onto the land, that we were going to have to partner with some of our settler allies, and that's what we set out to do. And that's going to form a big part of this of our movement that we're gonna be doing. So that's going to happen. That's all in hand. We've been working really hard. This has been something that we've consulted a lot with our chief and council, but also keeping our chief and council at respectful arm's length, so that we can continue our work in our way, and that we're not beholden to any outside interests other than stopping this pipeline. And in addition to that, all of the donations that we've received from organizations and individuals, we've made sure that we've kept them aware that no matter what, we are going to be in charge of our own project and on our own land, and that we don't intend to sway from that vision that we have, because this is about self-empowerment too, and this is about us reclaiming what is rightfully ours and asserting what is rightfully ours and not backing down. And of course, we're going to need help with this. We're going to have strong people on the ground for this, and we want we're sending that invitation out and putting that energy out into the universe that we get that good intention and that good work come back to us.
Well, I must say, seeing you there with your partner and your beautiful child and hearing you speak about the strategic and tactical framework that Kwantlen is using in this shared fight to stop Kinder Morgan is truly inspiring, Brandon. And, we're gonna get to some questions at the end here, but I want to move us forward, if it's okay, to our third speaker, who comes from deep in the interior Secwepemc territory, Kanahus Manuel, a very dear friend of mine, has been a leader in Indigenous social movement work for many years. And, her and her family and, members of her nation have been invested in building and establishing teeny houses along the right of way of Kinder Morgan's proposed Trans Mountain, which actually, I think Secwepemc has the largest territory that it goes through. So their work has been so inspiring. And it's a real honor to have her here tonight on the webinar to talk a little bit about what Secwepemc and Teeny House Warriors are doing, in their part of the world, in their sacred territory, to fight against this pipeline. So, Kanahus, if you could share with us some about your strategy, also, how people can show up in the best way to support Teeny House Warriors and all of our Indigenous peoples that are leading this fight.
My name is Kanahus Manuel. As I said, I come from a territory in the interior. I just have a map right here. If you can see this, it shows the coast right here. So we're quite a ways into the interior. Our territory is 180,000 square kilometers. So we come from a very vast territory. It's all unceded, unsurrendered. This proposed Trans Mountain pipeline proposes to cross 518 kilometers of our Secwepemc territory. Our people have met last summer to say no, there is no consent for this pipeline to pass. And since then, we've decided a way that our people are going to resist is to build these tiny houses on the path, or build them and put them directly on the path to stop the construction of this pipeline. One of the biggest threats right now is a man camp that they're proposing to build. They've applied for permits for a man camp to house 1,000 construction workers in the heart of our territory. And because of this threat and this urgency, our Secwepemc Women Warrior Society and Tiny House Warriors put together a declaration and asked everybody to sign in their opposition to this man camp. Some of the other work that we're doing is the divestment work that still needs to continue to happen with the international banks and insurance companies, and people need to really start divesting their funds out of banks that are investing and financing Kinder Morgan. With these tiny houses, we are painting all of the outsides of these tiny houses. These tiny houses are built on wheels. We've built 3 tiny houses so far with the help of volunteers, skilled construction workers and builders, and we are building 7 more. We're going to need help from skilled construction workers to come in. We want to do a lot of this very fast so we can get and deploy these tiny houses onto the front lines. One of the things that is really important to note is that this oil is coming from the Alberta tar sands. It is very dirty oil. There's no good way to clean up this when there is a spill, and that's why we're so opposed to this pipeline from coming through. One of the reasons why this pipeline is so dangerous to our people is because we depend on our food, and we have a duty and responsibility to protect our food. The salmon, the mountain goats, grizzly bears, badgers, deer, moose. We have the huckleberries, our rare lichen, Saskatoon, scosa, mushrooms, so much thousands of medicines. And also we have sacred sites, we have fasting grounds, we have ancient village sites and burial sites that this pipeline is also threatening with this expansion. it's very important that we address the food. Like Ta'a said, when the tide went out, their dinner table was set, and that's where we get all of our food. Is we get it from the water and we get it from our territories, and that's what we are defending when we're stopping up and blocking these pipelines. Direct action is very necessary, and I would like to, when we talk about consent, we're also talking about, consent for people to be on our territories, not just corporations. And I think it's really important for me at this time to talk about the Unistoten camp and some of the protocols that people must abide to go into the Unistoten camp that is stopping several proposed pipelines. And they built up a stronghold on their territory to stop this pipeline, which includes a healing center, several structures and homes for a lot of different people that are there to stop this pipeline. But before you even set foot in that territory, there's free, prior, informed consent. So no matter who you are, you have to say who you are, announce yourself, your lineage, your family, what your purpose of coming into the territory is. And if they allow us to come in, what skills do you have to offer, or how is your stay benefiting them and their nation? And that's really important, especially people that are choosing to stand up to this pipeline, that we have to take the lead of the Indigenous people of the territory. Will George and Ta'a, Ruben George, they have been spearheading this in Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Brandon, we know the people that are spearheading this fight in their respective territories. We must also respect that. Myself, in Secwepemc territory, we expect this Kinder Morgan pipeline to be Secwepemc led, because we can look at the best interest of our Secwepemc people far, far into the future. This is our main concern right here, clean water. It's very simple. It's very simple to know what we are fighting for, because without water, we don't have anything. And direct action is really necessary right now as we move forward in this battle against Kinder Morgan pipeline. We've seen what happened in Standing Rock with the mass mobilization and critical mass that was established against the Dakota Access Pipeline and Energy Transfer Partners. I myself was arrested at Standing Rock. I saw how a lot of people could flood into Standing Rock, not from that territory, and continue to create a narrative that might not be the best interest of that Indigenous territory. So I want people to be very clear when they're saying they want to support Indigenous movement or Indigenous, sovereignty, that we come from respective nations, and we must learn and know which nations that we are standing on and occupying. There's many different ways that the government and the corporations are going to be trying to combat any type of resistance against Kinder Morgan, and we must be very mindful of that, including the injunctions that corporations and governments have been putting on us from the beginning. So, our tactics in getting out there and blocking this pipeline, we know that we're going to face up to some type of criminalization, and we need the people to know the truth and to continue to advocate us, human rights advocates, lawyers, international human rights lawyers, and other types of lawyers, even criminal lawyers, to help assist us in legal battles, or even bailing people out and representing them on that level as well. So we're also reaching out and asking for people with those type of skills to step up too. We're going to be bringing some more attention to the man camp, and I have some websites, the Secwepemculuch.org and tinyhousewarriors.com. On our Facebook page, Tiny House Warriors, and I'm sure we can put that on to let people know how they can continue to support. I don't know if there's any other questions specifically that I should answer. Clayton?
Oh, we've got a whole host of questions, Kanahus, but I mean, I think you laid it out pretty good. If there's anything else that you want to add, we have a little bit more time, and then we can jump into the questions as soon as you're done.
Okay, one of the things that I would really like to address is Trudeau, and that the Prime Minister of Canada approved this pipeline to go through. He also needs to abide by the free, prior, informed consent, and he's not, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. They're not respecting that. The Minister of Justice needs to respect it, because at the end, she is the one that has the the say-all and sending any type of RCMP in on any type of water protectors or land defenders that are standing in the way of this pipeline. It's really also important to address the decision making when it comes to Indigenous people. One way that our Secwepemc people have come together to give a formal no consent to this pipeline was to organize a Secwepemc Assembly, which was a historic assembly that we had last fall to bring together hundreds of Secwepemc people and to discuss really important issues regarding our land, and to really respect who the decision makers are in the territory, and that's collectively the people. When you look at Indigenous territories in so-called British Columbia, the majority of nations are unceded. This is hard law, and this is why investors and financiers and international banks really are taking note of their investment in British Columbia, is because we come from a very rare part of the globe and that we've never given up our title to the territory. And we know you need that, whether it's insurance or loans or financing, is they need the title to the land and they don't have it here in BC. So this is very important for people that are stepping up and wanting to assist Indigenous people, is that as a collective people in our territory, we're standing on great power when we stand up against these pipelines, because the government or these corporations do not have the clear title to our territories.
Such powerful and poignant points there, Kanahus. I really appreciate calling out, especially Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. When he approved the Kinder Morgan pipeline so early in his government, right after committing Canada to the Paris Accord, after campaigning hard, promising to ratify the UN declaration. The contradictions are embarrassing, they're insulting, and I really appreciate you being here on the call today, this webinar. We have some questions that I wanted our guests to speak to, but first and foremost, I think there's been a lot of questions about March 10th. What I can share with you right now is that, the Coastal Salish land defense will begin on March 10th. Follow Protect the Inlet, as details will become public the week before. Local Indigenous communities in the Lower Mainland will defend against Kinder Morgan through ceremony and our Cosmo and worldview. And, there are good ways that you can show up and help. And all of the information on that, of course, is right here in the chat box, that link, Protect the Inlet. You'll be able to go ahead and get all the questions right now and with the information that's available right now. So one of the questions right off the bat, Brandon, we've got a question. Do you still need volunteers for the Kwantlen Healing Lodge build?
Yes, we do, actually. So right now we have a site picked out, which we're not releasing until a later date. But we will be needing people that will be able to come and help build. And so I should also add that we're not able to cover transportation for anybody. Like, we won't have a shuttle or anything like that. So you'll have to be autonomous in that regard. But bring all your work gear, your camping gear, and we will feed you. That much we can say for certain. And
We'll feed you,
yeah, I think that's it. I'm not sure what else I can say to that.
Awesome. Just for all of our viewers, Taha and Will are actually heading over to ceremony right now, so they've had to leave our webinar. But we extend and raise our hands, up to them and extend our love and respect to them for all the incredible work that they're doing for their nation and for all of us, in a good way. I'm going to go right back to our questions here. Another question we have is, how can we donate to this cause? Information around how to donate to the Teeny Houses Warriors or to the Kwantlen Healing Lodge would be great. Do you want to, Kanahus, do you want to talk about how people can donate? Are letters helpful? Letter writing? Is there letters that people can be writing for this fight?
We have a online way to donate. You could reach out to us at tinyhousewarriors@gmail.com. You could also e-transfer to tinyhousewarriors@gmail.com. And we have a place to, if you go to the Tiny House Warriors Facebook page, there's actually a post there that says how to donate funds, or I know I had sent it to you, Clayton. I don't know if there's a way that you could put it in the link as well. We are still raising funds for 7 more tiny houses. We have enough for 1 more actually, so we're raising enough for 6, and these are all on trailers so they could be mobile, and so we could be very active on our territory. 518 kilometers, a lot of time, a lot of space to cover, and so we're going to be just very active and confronting them wherever there is construction.
Brandon, how can people make donations to your guys' end? I know one of the ways that people can support, of course, to Tsleil-Waututh is through the Coastal Protectors .ca, I believe is the link. All these links will be posted with this webinar after the fact. But Brandon, did you want to talk a little bit about what way people can make donations to the Healing Lodge?
Yes, so if you go to our website, standwithkwantlen.org, there'll be information for making donations to our Healing Lodge Fund. At present, I think what we have covered so far with other donations, we have enough for the components to start building the structure, but we're still seeking some more funding to help with some add-ons such as insulation and other little things that we might need along the way. But yeah, so we're also accepting donations for, oh, excuse me. So my baby knows how to work my phone. Anyways, so we'll be looking for donations in kind too for food as well. Yeah. That's it.
Awesome. Another question we have is from Brett. How important do you think it is for people from across Coast Salish territories in what is now called Washington State and, of course, BC to stay together and break down colonial borders? So what are your guys' thoughts on the transboundary strategies with that medicine line there in BC and Washington? Because, of course, the coastal Salish, the Salish Sea is a shared sanctuary.
Yeah, I can respond. So a little bit about my family history. So on my Gabriel side, which is my mother's side of the family, her great-grandfather, Chief William Sepass from Skokoil, was originally from Kettle Falls, Washington, which is in Nooksack. And so, that border, which now divides America and Canada, is also this imaginary line that divided my family too. So, there's that history that's there. But part of the work that we're doing right now, like this generation of warriors and healers and artists, is that we're trying to come together and do away with those imaginary lines that have divided our people, and of course we think that this is a good time for us to bring our people back together, and why not? Let's do it.
Kanahus, did you have any response to that?
Yeah, it's really important for all of us to have this, fight this fight collectively, because it's not only impacting us in so-called Canada, but it's also impacting communities down in the US. The Salish Sea and this waterway doesn't stop. This water is all connected. Kinder Morgan, actually, the company is, based in the US, so they don't see borders. And in the same way, we can't see those same borders. There's a lot of people and a lot of activism that is coming out from the US right now, and a lot of people that want to, you know, support their skills and their resources, that we all need to join together right now. At this point, we have no choice. We have to really come together in whatever means on both sides of this border, north and south of this medicine line. It's very important. It's really crucial at this time.
So I have a question directed for you, Kanahu. So I'm going to share two questions right now. One is, excuse me, how do the teeny houses work and where will they go? Can you share that? Is one of the questions for you, Kanhus. And then for both of you, there's a question around, is there a way to sign protocol agreements with nations whose territory we work in? I was, you know, assuming from the perspective of non-natives working in territories in BC. You know, is there a protocol framework? I think, Kanahus, you had mentioned Unistoten, but you know, are there different examples of ways people can work in a transparent and accountable way with our people?
Well, for the first question, the Tiny House Warriors, it was really inspired by, you know, a lot of the attacks that have already been waged against us as Secwepemc people. We've seen our homes destroyed, standing up and defending territory at Sun Peak Ski Resort. And one of the things we wanted to do is to be mobile and to be out on our territory. We were always a nomadic people, and we were a hunter and gatherer society. So our land and our culture was based on being mobile. And so that was one of the reasons why we chose the tiny houses on the trailers, but also really inspired by Standing Rock and seeing how fast we can get structures and permanent like homes and warmth out there on the front lines for our people. We want it to be comfortable. We don't want to see the mass amounts of garbage that were created by tents that were just taken out by the wind and things like that at Standing Rock. We want to have some nice structure so that people could be, you know, comfortable out there, and to be mobile is really important. What the protocols, I think that Unistoten has really led the way for us in our Indigenous-led resistance movement to really conduct ourselves when we're on our territory like that and blocking. Really, people have to look into themselves, because it's really a relationship with their own selves and how they want to how they respect the territory in which they are in, and also their responsibility, because I say it's like their responsibility that they have, because they're drinking clean water, they're living on clean territories, and they're, you know, breathing the clean air. It's not going to be like that if we don't stand up. So it's really everybody's responsibility, and we all have responsibilities. It's the way that it's our duty to conduct ourselves in the utmost character and respectable way in other people's territory and movements. And so we have to really look at ourselves and look at other, I'm not going to go into somebody else's territory and be disrespectful. I'll never do that. And so that's what we expect from everybody else when they come into our territories.
Brandon, did you have anything to add to the idea of protocol frameworks or ways that, you know, settlers can work with our people in a good way?
Yeah, just give me a moment here. Oh, yeah. It's that time of day. Yeah, well, definitely, I think for us in our territory, we believe that upholding our ancient protocols is a high priority for us. As well, I think in sharing what Kanahus was saying about if I was in somebody else's territory, that I would be carrying myself in a humble way and showing my respect to the people of those lands. And if I wasn't being disrespectful, that I would that part of what I was taught would be to address it to the community and show them that I care and that I respect who they are and the journeys that they've been on as a people. And so, you know, very much in line with what Kanahus is saying about stuff like that. And so, you know, I think my hope is that the people who do answer the call to come to our side, that they're carrying themselves in the same manner, that they're holding themselves to account in a really respectful and humble way, and that when they come to us, that that we'll reciprocate that that humbleness and that kindness back to them when they come and do their. That's how we are. So I'm not sure if I can say anything more than that.
No, I think that's perfect. We have one last question, which is, can I volunteer on March 10th for the answer to that is absolutely you can volunteer for March 10th. On the website protecttheinlet.ca, under the FAQs, there is a volunteer sign up. So please go to protecttheinlet.ca. I'll put it in the side chat again. And if you haven't signed up, put your email in. Make sure you do. And there's lots of ways to get involved and to come and show up and stand shoulder to shoulder with land and water defenders in a good way. I want to give Kanahus and Brandon, if you've got some concluding statements, you can have a minute or so each just to wrap it up. And then I want to do my shout outs to everybody and bring this awesome webinar to conclusion. So go ahead, Brandon, and then Kanahus will give you the last word.
Yeah, so I think just to end there seems to be a lot of engagement on social media right now with what we're talking about tonight, which is good. I think that shows that they care about what's happening to our lands and our waters. I'm just grateful that I get to share some space with Kanahus and Ta'a and Will and yourself, Clayton. And I wanted to say thank you to the organizers of this event to put it together. Really grateful to have that space to come and speak. Also, I'm around, Kachina's around. We have several people working on our standwithkwantland.org website at any given time. So if there were questions that you had regarding our project and you would like to help, please do not hesitate to contact us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And that's all I have to say. Enjoy your evening. Aichka.
And thank you, Brandon, Gabriel, and again, thank you for sharing with your family with you, yes. Especially bringing the beautiful child to share in the webinar. Yeah. It always warms my heart up when I see dads bringing their kids to work. It's an awesome thing. So.
Well, she could have taken over too.
Right on.
Yeah.
So Kanahus, if you've got some concluding statement you want to make for our webinar today, that'd be awesome.
Yes, I just really would like to reiterate the importance when we talk about free, prior, informed consent, and that this is one of our laws as Indigenous people. When people come into our territory, they must have the free, prior, informed consent, and that includes what skills you're offering to this nation to make this nation a better place. And so, we ask everybody, how is your stay in this nation and occupying and settling in these nations, making it a better place? And we're going to have everybody make this a living and breathing law within our nations. And this is what reconciliation looks like when non-Native people can still really look at the Indigenous people and their laws as the utmost law above any law. And so people need to be very conscious in their presence and their time and space in our territories. And because we care about our territories and we care about human rights, not just for Indigenous people, but for everybody that's occupying our territories, we care about human rights. That's why we're human rights advocates. It needs to be a living and practiced law, and it needs to be respected, and it's essential to our movements at this point. One of the things too, I have this book back here. And it's really important for non-Native people to really look at this book, the Reconciliation Manifesto, Recovering the Land and Rebuilding Our Economy. It's one of my father's books. He also has another book, Unsettling Canada. And if you really want to see how you can help or really understand our movement, Indigenous resistance, there are two very important resources for people to look for. Also reach out to us at tinyhousewarriors@gmail.com. I also have my personal email, kanahusmanuel@gmail.com, and the Tiny House Warriors Facebook page. So please reach out to us. We're encouraging everybody to help and stand with Kwantlen and the Tsawilitooth and the Secwepemc and the resistance around the Alberta tar sands and everyone in between from here to the Salish Seas that are resisting against this Kinder Morgan pipeline. We need everybody to stop it. So we stand with you, and thank you, Clayton, and for everybody for making this panel happen. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kanahus. And I also wanted to just share with everybody that Kanahus has announced that she's getting married, if I may. And there are ways that you could support that in a good way.
Awesome.
I think they're calling it the Freedom Wedding. So we're all so happy for you,
Congratulations.
Kanahus.
Actually, I got married on Saturday. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it happened already. Oh my goodness.
So,
that's awesome.
Yes, I'm the new wife of Orlando Watley, and I'm advocating for his freedom and wrongful conviction charge in the U.S. But my freedom fighting doesn't stop with the pipeline. It continues, and we're just look at here it is.
Oh, cool. Congratulations.
Well, I raise my hands to you and your partner and your beautiful family, Kanahus. Your family has done a lot, over generations for all Native people, and it's good to see you continue the tradition. Everyone that's tuned in to our webinar tonight, these are intense times. Again, I invoke the name Colton Bushy, Tina Fontaine, all our young people that have, had their lives snuffed out because of the racism, this both systemic, interpersonal, and internalized racism that exists in Canada. We've got a lot of work to do to make, these lands they call Canada, equal and fair and free for all people. And that's why Indigenous leadership in these fights is so important, and it's so important that our non-Native allies, that they help us, that they raise us up, they take a step back sometimes, and I think that it's really important that, as we do this work, leading into March 10th and after March 10th in the fight against Kinder Morgan, that we, are rooted in a strong framework of anti-racism, of anti-oppression, and anti-colonialism. It's very, very important to politicize ourselves and read up about this idea of decolonization. Everybody has been affected by colonialism, by the violent history of Canada's genocidal policies that continue to this day in a neo-colonial way through Canada's extractive industries-based economy. That economy disproportionately impacts Indigenous people's health, collective rights, and way of life. And all of these things are constitutionally enshrined and protected. We have powerful legal tools, powerful social movement tools, and we need your help to stop Kinder Morgan and to stop the expansion of the Alberta tar sands. I want to give a big shout out to the organizers of our webinar tonight, Stand, big shout out to you, everybody from Coastal Protectors, from Tsleil-Waututh Nation, Sacred Trust, from Kwantlen Healing Lodge Initiative, from Teeny Houses Warriors, to my own crew at 350.org, and all of you who have participated tonight. Take this information forward, because we got a big fight to protect the inlet ahead of us. We got a big fight to protect the interior, nation's territories from this pipeline. And, and most importantly, too, as well, that I would throw in there, we really need to support First Nations in the Alberta tar sands that are living with the world's largest industrial project ever in the history of mankind. There's a project called the Tech Mine. Learn about the Tech Frontier Mine. It's the biggest tar sands mine proposal to date, and it'll be the mine that'll fill the Kinder Morgan pipeline with bitumen if we don't all show up and work together in a good way. And so there's lots of ways to get involved, many vectors to get involved in this movement. You know, talk to your family about this webinar, share it with them once we post it. And there will be hyperlinks once we post this webinar on ways to support all of these incredible Indigenous-led initiatives, ways to donate, ways to volunteer. So look out for that. And I want to thank you, you know, in a good way sorry I'm talking to you from the dark. I called in tonight from London, England. So it's 3 a.m. over here right now. But that said, Igosima, Kinenaskumitnawao, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.